start recording from this moment, if you like. We move into preliminary matters. We have 2 minutes of the previous meetings.
Excuse me, could you introduce yourself so we know who you are?
We don't normally do that. We don't normally do that. Everybody has a...
Well, I can't see who you are from here.
I'm going to press on with the meeting, and if I may say, you know, I'm assuming that everybody is going to be respectful and follow the normal procedures for meetings. I don't think, like Barack Obama, that we're going to have to sing to sort of bring order back again. But we will proceed with the meeting. I'm chairing the meeting, and we'll carry on if you don't mind. So we go on to minutes of the previous meetings. Those are on pages 7 to 20. Are they agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. There is an issue about declarations of interest. If any members have any declarations of interest, if there's any suggestions about the changes in the agenda, the items of business. Councillor Rennie?
Chair, could I ask, because there are so many members of the public and obviously ward councillors for the items on the agenda 7 and 8 in relation to Sorghum Massey, would you be willing to perhaps rearrange the order of business in order to facilitate them for an early getaway, or is there a reason perhaps why that may not be possible?
We have had some discussions about this. There are a number of items, they won't be long, I don't think, that relate to the financial background to the authority, which I think would be helpful to the members of the public to understand the context against which we're making some discussions. There is also proposals for changes and amalgamations in St Helens, and I think again, I don't think it'll be a long item, but I think for the public who are here to look at decisions further down the agenda, it will be useful and interesting to see, you know, that he's not just in isolation, there are other items on the agenda as well. So if you don't mind, I think we will... Would you give order, please? We will proceed with the agenda as it's printed, if that's all right. But if it gets lengthy, if we get into lengthy, we'll look at that, because I know the public have got some distance to travel, but we'll stick with the agenda as printed, if you don't mind. So we'll move on to item 3 on the agenda. That's pages 21 to 30, and that is the petition concerning the merger of Upton and West Kirby fire stations. Now, I think there is a member of the public who is wishing to present a petition to the authority. Is that not right?
No. No, I don't think she knew that he was getting presented today.
Okay, fine. So we'll move on to item...
She wasn't informed.
Okay, so we'll move on to item 4 then, and that relates to a deputation. And I understand that there's a deputation who want to come and give a presentation before the authority today. Would there be somebody, a spokesman for that deputation, sir?
Yes,
Would you like to stand and give we'll just outline the procedure for the help and assistance of the public, if possible, with regard to deputations.
Thank you, Chair.
Yes.
We will in a moment, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. If I can just explain that the authority's constitution standing orders require that a deputation can be addressing the authority. However, there is a limit of an up to 5-minute address, and this can be followed by a further 5 minutes of questions from members of the authority. However, I do have to say at this point that question and answer session does not form a debate, because clearly this is not part of any ongoing consultation. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a spare seat at the end here with a microphone if you'd like to step forward and use that. Stand or sit as you prefer.
You want to do it now?
Yes.
How does this work?
Just press the button.
Bottom one.
Yeah. You're on.
Right. My name's Les Spencer. I'm the chairman of the Sorghum Massey Village Conservation Area Society. I'm communicating the majority view of the householders and members who are opposing the plan you're considering today, namely to build a new fire station on Greenbelt land adjacent to our conservation area and directly opposite a listed Grade 2 historic stone bridge. Time does not permit me to present the full extent of our opposition, but we hope you will appreciate that the argument is not as black and white as the Chief Fire Officer has been suggesting. At this moment, I'm unable to fully illustrate the impact of loss of amenity use, breach of green belt policy, habitat loss, public nuisance to adjacent sheltered housing, and a projected drop in nearby property values estimated at 10%. I have prioritised other concerns. The Chief Fire Officer has repeatedly stressed that there is no alternative operational response, no plan B. The intention to build in this location has been presented as a matter of dire public safety for residents impacted by the closure of the West Kirby station. I hesitate to describe his tone as scaremongering, but that's how it seemed at times. As the committee should be aware, the West Kirby Hoylake Mills area has had no cover from the West Kirby station for half of the last 2 years, as it has been operationally closed for half of every week with call-outs covered from Upton. Presumably a risk assessment was conducted by the Fire Authority, and it was felt that closure for approximately 180 days a year didn't unacceptably compromise residential safety in the West Kirby area. Indeed, we believe that call-out response times of 10 minutes from Upton to the area concerned is broadly comparable to national averages out to many other parts of Merseyside. Why is it currently acceptable to provide fire and emergency cover from Upton, but apparently of such critical importance to do it from the proposed so-called Massey Greenbelt site in the future? If it is felt that response times from Upton to West Kirby need shortening, then why doesn't the Fire Authority use one smaller targeted response vehicle to complement the larger appliances on a consolidated improved site at Upton? That would cost a lot less than the 4.2 million anticipated for the so-called Massey station. Like the ambulance services, these vehicles can be on standby on the road awaiting call-outs, but based from Upton. Why is it that Merseyside, which is one of the larger UK fire authorities, still sends out fully manned large appliances to minor call-outs? Is there internal union resistance to more flexible operational responses? Is this reliance upon large appliances dictating operational restructure in this case? It is clear that Merseyside Fire Authority have set a precedent that cover for West Kirby can be safely provided from Upton. So there is, despite what the Chief Fire Officer says, an option B, and that's closing West Kirby and redeveloping Upton. There's also a plan C, and that's to employ a smaller targeted response vehicle to supplement cover from Upton. This development completely hinges upon getting permission to build on Greenbelt land. Emergency services can seek planning permission on Greenbelt land if they can prove very special circumstances, and only where there are no alternatives. We contend that there is a workable alternative, and that is based upon the redevelopment of Upton, but for whatever reason this hasn't been fully publicly debated. There are also financial aspects of this development that seem to compromise public perceptions of transparency and suggest conflicts of interest in the planning process. There's clearly a conflict of interest that the sellers of the Sorghum Massey land are Wirral Council, whose officers will adjudicate approval of any planning application, and also whether very special circumstances are actually present. The land is currently worthless, but with planning will be much more valuable. What price and terms have been agreed for the Fire Authority to acquire this land? Who will actually pay for it, Merseyside Fire Authority or via grant from central government? How much capital inflow does the authority expect from the sales of West Kirby and Upton? Forgive us for being cynical, but might the drivers of this development be mostly financial, and the perceived safety needs of West Kirby residents a convenience to justify the development? The Fire Authority stands to gain the resale revenue of Upton and West Kirby, and Wirral Council might be receiving a commercial price for an otherwise worthless piece of land. From a cash flow position, that seems like a win for everyone other than the local residents. Furthermore, we gather that this scheme in principle has been approved by central government for a 1.49 million DCLG grant. But might that be predicated upon an exaggeration of the dangers of longer response times to West Kirby? Do the grant providers know that an adequate service is already being provided from Upton for 50% of each week, and that redevelopment of Upton would cost a public purse a fraction of the 4.2 million total cost of the new Sorghum Massey station? Our feeling is that very special circumstances might be being inflated to circumvent Greenbelt protection and to achieve financial restructuring benefits and access to central government grants. It looks as though special circumstances are further being boosted by attempts to involve Merseyside Police and North West Ambulance Services as subsidiary tenants. However, neither party has shown any expression of interest, so I hope they will be excluded from the planning consideration. Much is said about the health and safety benefits to West Kirby by moving to Sorgo Massey, but what of the lengthening response?
Now, please, in fairness.
What about the lengthening response times for Upton? The primary dangers are to places like Arrow Park Hospital.
Okay, that's, you've had it down there. Thank you.
Such a
As we have a,
Unbelievable.
well, before we come to questions,
I was just going to say, is there no facility to allow an extra 2 more minutes?
I don't need 2 minutes, probably 30 seconds would be enough.
no, we've had the 5 minutes.
I don't want to listen to
Um,
that. You don't want to listen to consultation. You don't want to listen to this.
What we will do is ask if we've had one view, one side of the view, if you like. Is there anybody in the audience with a contrary position to that who would like to make a point?
What, favour of the 5 minutes?
In favour of it?
No, that we've had that side of the argument. In balance and in fairness, it happens in all local authorities. If there is one side of a presentation, if there is a contrary view to that presentation, they must be given an opportunity as well. Is there anybody who has a contrary view to what has been said? Sir?
Thanks, Chair. I'm just going to
You
use...
just say who you are.
Yeah, I'm just going to use on the Vice Chair of Merseyside FPU. It's just over
Come
some
down
of
and
the
use
points.
the
Would you like to come and use the microphone? Again, you will be given 5 minutes to make a presentation. Then we will move on into questioning. Some of the points, sir, that you might have made could be picked up in questions.
I'm Tommy Hughes. I'm the Vice Chair of Merseyside Fire Brigade Union. If I may, Chair, I've been given comments from Mark from the Brigade Secretary, who unfortunately can't be here as he's at a recent committee meeting. The viewpoints do reflect the viewpoint of Merseyside Fire Brigade Union. Fire Brigade Union, first I'd like to state, always applauds local communities when we come together to fight unnecessary and damaging cuts to essential services. The FBU in this instance agree with the Chief Fire Officer and with the Fire Authority. The fire station staffed with firefighters 24 hours a day, 7 days a week is the most effective way to immediately deploy firefighters into their communities to save and preserve life. We also agree that fire engine staffed with 5 firefighters is the safest and most efficient way to deal with the multitude of different rescue scenarios that firefighters can face every day of their working lives. Therefore, the FBU are committed to defend whole-time fire cover in Merseyside and also to fight to protect safe and effective criminals. On a purely professional level, and as firefighters, we're fundamentally opposed to the use of small fire units or target response vehicles.
You like that, mate?
Their very name gives an insight into the limitations of these vehicles. They can only safely and effectively deal with small fires. What they do is they divert valuable funding away from maintaining fully staffed and crucially fully equipped fire appliances. Firefighters clearly need the correct tools for the job to carry out effective rescues wherever and whenever that may need to be the case. Sending firefighters to emergency incidents in transit vans or in cars severely limits what we're able to do when we arrive at those incidents. I'm sure everyone would agree that there is no cliche that in these situations every second really does count. Every firefighter on every station in the country would echo those views. I'd also like to say, it's not your firefighters, it's not the Chief Fire Officer, and it's not the authority who have caused this situation to arise. It's the government who have forced this situation. It's the government who have forced the situation on the fire service and on the communities of Greasy and Sorgo Massey. In light of recent events in Europe and North Africa and the potential for terrorist attacks in the UK, these cuts, I'm sure you'd agree, look even more dangerous. That's why the Fire Brigade Union are committed to continuing to fight these cuts, both locally and nationally, although we do fear there is yet worse to come. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. So, thank you for that. So now there will be for members to ask questions for 5 minutes, if there are any questions that members have. Councillor Allen.
Can I just ask if it's now the appropriate time for the Chief Fire Officer to address some of the queries that were brought up by Mr Spencer, or are we going to debate that?
Yeah, because it was said that this is not a debate, that this is for the members of the public to make the delegation, and we, if we like, we go into the agenda and we pick up any of these points in the agenda proper. It is not part of the, it's a delegation, point made, alternative view, and we'll get into the issues within the reports themselves. Go on.
Just to respond to Councillor Rennie, all of the points raised by both parties are covered within the reports on the agenda, Chair.
Councillor Gladden.
Thanks, Chair. It's a question for you. When we look at the incidents that you as pharmacists have to attend, I think just from people's point of view, how many are actual fires and how many are road traffic accidents or anything else? And not just for me.
Yeah, I don't personally have. I know possibly where we're
What
going
percentage, what do you think?
is that fire calls are decreasing as assumed, is the point that you're making. However, the point if it's towards the target response vehicles, if it's towards the small fires units, is that potentially a luxury when you do have funding to be able to use them as supplement. However, when the funding for those vehicles and the personnel in vehicles is going to be taken out of an incredibly tight budget, that money, quite clearly for me, from an operational purpose, needs to go to funding fully equipped and fully staffed fire engines, so it's available to respond to all types of incidents, as I say, not just to small fires. It seems to be funding that's directed in a place where it can be better used elsewhere.
So,
I'd just like to ask you, what is your response time as opposed to the rest of the country, and given the fact that we have whole time firefighters?
I could say that the figure for the response time is in the package, Chief, would you be able to?
Yeah, but for everybody here today, the response time as opposed to other fire policies, and the fact that we're whole time.
maybe the Chief will pick that up during the presentation, his presentation, further down the agenda. Are there any other questions regarding the delegation point and counterpoint? If not, we'll move on, because we did say that we would deal next with item 5, revenue and capital outturn. This is pages 31 to 62.
Thanks, Chair. I'll pick this one up. This report details the financial year-end position and the final accounts for 2014-15. Members will recall that the authority set a 2-year financial plan that required savings of £6.3 million over a 2-year period. The financial year in question, 2014-15 and 2015-16. To deliver that £6.3 million required savings of £2.9 million from back office support and technical areas. Despite that large-scale saving, that still left an unavoidable £3.4 million required from operational response. £3.4 million equates to a reduction in nearly 100 firefighter posts by natural retirement rates, and that was to be achieved over an extended time period and would result in a further reduction in the number of appliances that could be staffed. The Fire Authority, having already gone from 42 appliances to 28, recognised that this would mean a reduction to probably a further 4 appliances. After extensive consultation, it was considered that this might best be delivered by 3 station managers in Knowsley, Wirral and St Helens, and an outright closure in Liverpool. And specific reports around those measures are elsewhere on the agenda. The accounts that, as presented today present the position at the end of 2014-15, the first of those 2 years. Ostensibly, it's good news in that whilst the 6.3 million is yet to be delivered in full, we have delivered the savings that we expected to up to the end of year 1, slightly faster than we expected, and we're ahead of the game by about £1.2 million. This is for 3 reasons. Firefighter retirement's been slightly ahead of schedule, but obviously the downside to that is it makes it harder and harder to maintain fire engine availability as the numbers of staff are reducing. Secondly, back office and support savings have been delivered quicker than expected. And thirdly, pay restraints has been in place for all staff, with pay awards being settled at 1%. There is still work to do, however, and the full firefighter retirement required to achieve the savings of 100 posts won't be delivered until next year. In addition, depending on authority decisions later on the agenda, the structural changes to support that reduced number of staff won't be achieved for at least a couple of years henceforth if we proceed with the station mergers and planning and building all the time taken there. The Chancellor sets his emergency budget in a little over a week's time, and all sounding seems to suggest that there will be major cuts for local government and fire and rescue services over the next few years. Probably those cuts will be on the same trajectory as the spending review period just finished. And for the Fire Authority here, we have the away day in just over a fortnight's time. We'll be dealing with significant concerns that compulsory redundancy for firefighters may be unavoidable. So whilst therefore it seems like good news, and we're ahead of where we expected to be on the current round of cuts, it's my expectation that we'll hit 2016-17 and the next round of cuts, not having fully delivered the current financial plan in terms of either actual staff reductions or having delivered the infrastructure changes needed to reflect the reduction in staff as firefighters retire. Members will recall that their confirmed strategy is to build up a capital investment reserve to support the infrastructure changes that are proposed and therefore avoid borrowing to fund capital investment. Since of course any borrowing adds pressure to the revenue budget because the borrowing has to be repaid. Therefore, the report recommends that the underspending of 1.2 million is used to top up the capital investment reserve. I think the only other matter to bring to your attention is that in relation to earmarked reserves, and it's an issue touched upon by Councillor Gladden, there's been significant concern from the authority about the rise in the number of road traffic collisions during the year through the scrutiny committees and so on, and £100,000 has been set aside in a reserve to work with partners to work around reducing the number of RTCs over the next couple of years. Copies of the draft accounts themselves are available. At this stage under the legislation, I'm responsible for signing those off, and they will then be subject to audit during July and August, and the final audited accounts will come back to the authority in September to sign off. It's probably best if I stop there and take any questions on the accounts.
So, members, any questions relating to item 5 on the agenda?
Yeah, just to make comments, Chair. I know we haven't saved the 6.5 million yet, although you've done very, very well to get the 1.2 million we've got, and I know we have to do the mergers. Just very concerned, Kieran. We know there's going to be an announcement next week in the House where there'll be more cuts coming, and we know that there's going to be the autumn statement, which happens, I don't know why they call it the autumn statement, because it happens just before Christmas. And it does not look good, it really does not look good. So I'm afraid we are going to have to invest to save in the future. So I welcome that you're putting that into that investment. Thank you.
Okay, that's the financial context update for members. Oh, yes?
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. It's a comprehensive report, and I looked through it quite a lot. You can see within it the amount of reductions that had to be made. Is this direct because of budget cuts to the authority that we're having to make such drastic cuts throughout the last 12 months and the full government time? Is that the reason behind this?
Through the Chair, yes, the Fire Authority is funded approximately 70% from central government funding and 30% from council tax, and as members will be well aware, there have been significant cuts to government funding in recent times in response to the pressures on public finances. So those cuts in our grant funding have led to the reductions which we're faced with, and the savings that have had to be made.
Chair, I think good response, and thanks very much for the response. I think it's necessary for the members of the public to know exactly why we're having to make such drastic cuts in public safety, because that's in essence what the Fire Authority do, is to serve the public for safe communities, and I thank you for the answer. I think that the wider public need to know the reason behind why we're having to do that, and the wider public should be supporting the Fire Authority and any protests that are made should be made directly to the government. Thanks, Chairman.
Yes, thank you very much. Well, point very well made. Yes, Councillor.
I mean, thank you, Chairman. I mean, I've listened to obviously what the new member of the authority has just commented, and clearly there have been some dramatic savings having to be made by the authority, but just for perhaps his benefit and again benefit for the members of the public here, perhaps the Deputy Chief Executive could just outline when did these cuts start, because clearly it isn't just now with the present government, it isn't with the last government. In fact, from my recollection, these cuts and the reductions that we've been making, although clearly they are becoming more and more severe and acute, but it's been a long time overall, my time here on the Fire Authority, which I think is kind of my 8th year now.
Thanks, Chair. I think it would be fair to say that the Fire Authority has faced budget cuts over an extended period of time. Going back over a decade ago, the Fire Authority had about 1,500 firefighters and has had to make savings. It is without doubt that they have accelerated in recent times through the most recent spending review as the cuts have been applied to the whole of the public sector, and in particular those areas of local government which are not protected from the cuts.
In previous, we understand what you're saying, in previous governments, in previous financial settlements, we had floors and ceilings, and the Merseyside Fire Authority was generally at the floor, and we were also allowed to go up 2% and 4%. Remember, our budget planning was a 4% increase. I think it's the past 5 years where we've seen a 50% and more reduction in our grant, a third reduction in our budget, a double the national average reduction for other fire authorities in our budget. And I think members will know from the briefings that we're starting to get that what we're looking at is a further 30% of cuts in the next 3 years, 14% next year, 9% is, and then 7% all the way around. So we've had big challenges, we know that. We've got some more big challenges to come. All I would say is that as a country, the government seems to have said we no longer want comprehensive fire insurance. We don't really even want, it's not just us, it's the whole country. We don't really even want third-party fire and theft. We just want, the basic minimum that we can get. And that's a challenge that will face the country and Merseyside and the city in years to come. Which is why our chairman is in Harrogate today lobbying, for a better slice of the cake and a better settlement. Because, as is often said, when people are running out of terrorist and fire incidents, our firefighters and our good people are running in. And we need to support those people as a whole community. Okay, well, on item 5, on the budget, on the finance rather, any other questions or points? Thank you. So we move on to 6, proposals for Eccleston and Eccleston Fire Station, page 63 onwards. Chief?
Thanks, Chair. Members, the purpose of this report is that you approve a 12-week period of public consultation commencing on the 3rd of August over the 2 proposals which are listed in your report at paragraphs 1 and 2, which is at the top of page 64. That is to consider the merger of Eccleston and St Helens and a new station on Canal Street, which is in St Helens town centre, and the redesignation of one of the 2 existing whole-time fire appliances to whole-time retained. That would be on a 30-minute recall, so to be clear, that is not on an immediate response. Or alternately, members, it would be the other alternative to deliver the same amount of savings would be the outright closure of Eccleston Fire Station. You are well aware by now, not least because of the previous report that Kieran has just spoken to, of the cuts, the in-year cuts to the authority budget for this financial year, which have already taken effect as of the 1st of April. In practical terms, therefore, we now have to make all of these structural changes to reflect the financial reality, which are the outright station closures, which you've already agreed to and we've implemented at Outturn on the 1st of April, and the station mergers in Knowsley, which you've already approved, West Wirral, which you will consider later on the agenda, and finally in St Helens, which is what you're being asked to consider now, subject of course to the outcomes of public consultation. With the exception of our new members, of conscious we have 2 new members here today who joined us after the AGM in June. You'll all be well aware of the background to the merger proposals, the detail of which is contained within your report at paragraph 6 through 11, which is on pages 64 to 66. There are other options you could consider, and they are detailed within Appendix A, which is pages 73 to 77, that's your public consultation document. I've not recommended any of them to you, as because quite simply the merger proposal does deliver the least impact on operational response. That is a fact in St Helens, just the same way as it's a fact in Knowsley and in West Wirral, or indeed throughout the country where mergers have been used extensively as a means to deliver savings over the course of the last spend and review. That is most obvious in West Yorkshire, where a total of 8 mergers have been or are in the process of being implemented. That is the closure of 16 fire stations to build 8 new stations, which is the same as that which we are proposing you do here. As you're aware, members, the merger principle is simple. It involves identifying the midpoint between 2 whole-time fire stations, and then identifying land as close as possible to the midpoint on which to build a new fire station. Appendix B on page 79 shows the locations of all the sites that have been identified through working with our partners in St Helens Council. Appendix C on pages 81 through to 85 describes the methodology that we use to determine optimum locations to site our fire stations, and then how we calculate the run times from the fixed location that is the fire station. And that same methodology has been applied to all of the merger proposals. One viable site for the St Helens merger is the Canal Street section of the Pilkingtons Watson Street works, which is shown on the map at Appendix D, which is on page 87. The site's exactly equidistant between the 2 existing stations, and therefore is the optimum location. Colin Schofield and I have held talks with the MD of Pilkingtons, and we have a joint commitment to work together to secure the land required on the site to build a new fire station, should members, after considering the outcomes of the public consultation, approve the merger proposal. The table at paragraph 17 on page 67 shows a comparison between the average run times for Eccleston and St Helens from 2008-9 to 2014-15. What you'll see, members, is the St Helens average run times are broadly similar, whereas the Eccleston run times have increased. Members are well aware of the reasons why it's no longer possible to staff all of the non-key stations, or the appliances rather, all of the time, so I won't repeat that now, but Kieran effectively has explained that on the previous report. Paragraph 18 details the predicted mean average run times for incidents on the St Helens and Eccleston station areas from the Canal Street site, which are 5 minutes 26 seconds and 4 minutes 47 seconds respectively. The mean average run times for the combined station area is predicted at 5 minutes and 12 seconds. Ordinarily, members, a merger would not result in a faster response time, but in all circumstances it would reduce the overall impact on response times compared to any other structural change option. On this occasion, however, it does result in a faster run time, which is a result of the proximity of the proposed site on Canal Street to the arterial routes that run through St Helens, which is specifically the St Helens Linkway, which can be clearly seen on Appendix D, and which members from that area will be aware was built sometime after the 2 existing fire stations. To be clear, members, this proposal still involves changing the crewing of one of the two existing whole-time fire appliances to whole-time retain, thus introducing a 30-minute delay in its response. To be clear, members, we would only ever use that as a strategic reserve, i.e. it gets recalled in when the number of available appliances that we have drops below a certain trigger point. Appendix E on page 89 shows you the 10-minute response isochrone, which covers the existing stations. Appendix F on page 91 shows the 10-minute isochrone from Canal Street. Appendix G on page 93 shows you the graduated 5 to 10 minute response coverages from the existing stations, whereas Appendix H on page 95 shows you the graduated 5 to 10 minute response coverage from Canal Street. What you'll see, members, is that the areas that are not covered by the 10-minute isochrones are minimal. They contain very few properties. They are in the north end of Rainford, around Rainford Junction, the north end of Billinge, and the south end of Bold Heath, where, for anyone who knows that area will know, there is very little, if any, housing at all. What I would say is that the areas, or if you like, the beyond 10-minute coverage are virtually identical through either the existing option or the merger option. As with all the other merger proposals, the merged station would house two appliances, as I've explained previously, one of which is whole-time, one of which is whole-time retained on 30-minute recall. If members were to approve the proposal, then officers will commence a period of 12-week public consultation effective from the 3rd of August. A copy of the consultation plan is attached at Appendix J on page 99 of your report and reflects that which officers have undertaken previously in Knowsley and West Wirral. The alternative to the merger is the outright closure of Eccleston Fire Station and the relocation of the Eccleston clients to the existing St Helens Fire Station at Parstocks Road, again to be crewed whole-time retained on the 30-minute recall. If we were to close Eccleston outright, the mean average response time to life risk incidents would increase to 6 minutes 44 seconds, which is 1 minute and 57 seconds longer than if the merger proposal is approved. It is for that reason, members, that my recommendation to you is to proceed with the consultation process over the merger option. Either of the options will deliver a reduction to 22 whole-time equivalent posts required to deliver 1/4 of the £3.4 million savings assumed to be delivered from the Knowsley, West Wirral and St Helens merger proposals and the outright closure of Allerton in Liverpool. The equalities impact assessment for the merger, closures and other operational response proposals is attached at Appendix N to your report, which is on pages 107 to 134 and will be developed further once any consultation process is concluded. I'm conscious that there is a great deal of information on this report for you to digest, members. I'm also conscious that there is a wish to move through the agenda, so I'll pause at that point to take any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Members, if members have any questions? Councillor Malone?
Yes, thanks, Chairman. And I speak as the member for St Helens here when I speak. I've read this report line by line, and one line that actually stood out to me is on page 69 of the report under paragraph 30, and it says the merger is the preferred least worst option. Thank you for telling us the truth. This is the least worst option that we have to do. I know we have to do it with £6.5 million still to find, and if we don't do this, make these cuts, then I know somebody will come into this authority and make these cuts on our behalf. So it's up to us to stand by it. I would be very, very sorry to lose Eccleston Station. It's not what the people of St Helens wanted, but it's what we're going to have to have. It does need money spending on it, and it is in a lovely area. However, Parstocks Road, far too big for purpose. Not comfortable for anybody to work in. It has no disabled access, the community into the building. So we do agree that a new build has to be done within that area. I have concerns over the Canal Street area, and my concern is there is contaminated land around that area of St Helens, with it being the Pilkington's company that had it. And this government has now not just cut the contaminated land budget, they have stopped it altogether. So there's no more making bad land good. There's no money coming from this government to do that. So would that, can I ask the Chief, would that funding have to be paid by Merseyside Fire, or can we do an agreement with Pilkington on the sale of the land?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Maloney. Just to, I think, just pick up on the first point that Councillor Maloney made, and members will be aware that certainly officers have always tried to be as open and transparent and honest with you around the situation, which is that there are no options that we can recommend to you that are going to improve performance. The fact of the matter is that we are very much in the game here of as mitigating as much as we can the impact on the operational response capability of the service, and we try to articulate that within the consultation documentation, which I think that we certainly do through the setting out the alternative options, none of which, say all of which would lead to a worse outcome. In terms of the land remediation, that will be a matter of dialogue and negotiation between ourselves and Pilkington. So whilst clearly we would seek to get the best outcome we could for the authority in that regard, until such time as those negotiations were concluded, I couldn't be more definitive than that. But I take the point the Council makes.
Yeah. So can we come back then, Chair? Thanks very much for that. I have looked at it, I have spoken to people about it, and I see it that it's our job here today to get the best operational response that we can for the people of St Helens. So I would fully like to support the recommendation that it goes out to consultation within the St Helens Borough.
So, unless there are any other questions or observations from members, you look to page 64, recommendations are there in paragraph 4, which is to undertake and approve a 12-week period of public consultation, and 5 following consultation to bring the report back. That's been moved. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you. So we'll move on to item 7, which is pages 135 to 370, the Wirral Fire Cover Consultation number 2, outcomes. Chief.
Thanks, Chair. The purpose of this report is to inform members of the outcomes of the 12-week public consultation process of the proposal to merge Upton and West Kirby fire stations at a new station on Sogo Massey Road as an alternative to the outright closure of West Kirby fire station. As we've stated previously, members, in either option, one of the 2 existing whole-time fire appliances is redesignated whole-time retained on a 30-minute recall for resilience purposes, as that is required to deliver the reduction of 22 whole-time equivalent posts, which is how the savings are made. Paragraphs 15 to 21 on pages 137 describe, 137 to 138 rather, describe how we publicise the consultation process. Appendix 1 at paragraph 151 to 168, Appendix 1 at pages 151 to say to 168, is the public consultation document which provides a concise summary of the financial challenges faced by the authority as a result of the ongoing cuts to its grant, a summary of structural change options open to the authority to make the necessary savings, and my professional view on each. Appendices 2 and 3 on pages 169 to 213 contain a record of all of the correspondence entered into by officers and members of the public, MPs and councillors over the proposal. Consultation events themselves are listed at paragraph 23 on page 138 through to 139, which I'll just read them out for you members. So there was the focus group at Sorgo Massey, a focus group in West Kirby, a focus group in Upton, public meeting in Sorgo Massey, a stakeholders meeting in Hoylake, a public meeting in Upton, a public meeting in West Kirby, and then an all Wirral joint forum at Birkenhead Fire Station. The report goes on to provide specific details around the outcomes from each of the individual components of the consultation process that I've just listed in some detail. Paragraphs 30 to 34 on pages 139 to 140 and at Appendix 6 at pages 311 to 326 provide the detail of the outcomes from the online questionnaire and the questionnaires that were returned in hard copy at public meetings. Paragraphs 35 to 42 on pages 140 to 143 provides a summary of the outcomes from the focus groups and deliberative forums, with the full detail contained in the Opinion Research Services report at Appendix 5 on pages 261 to 310. I just need to point out at this point, members, there is a typing error in the report which refers to that as Appendix 7 rather than 5. Okay, it is Appendix 5. Paragraphs 43 on pages 143 to 144 provides a summary of the outcomes of the postal survey of 10,000 homes, 5,000 of which were on the Upton station area, which includes Sorgo Massey, and 5,000 of which were on the West Kirby station area. That survey and its outcomes are also referenced within the Opinion Research Services report at Appendix 5. Paragraphs 44 to 59 on pages 144 to 146 provides a summary of the outcomes of the public meetings and the stakeholder forums. Appendix 4 at pages 215 to 260 captures a summary of the questions raised and the answers that I gave in response at the public meetings. It would be remiss of you members not to draw your attention to the financial implications within the report of paragraphs 68 to 71 on page 148. In total, the cost of this process was £46,343. I should point out, members, that that's in addition to the first consultation process over the Greasby site, which was £18,744. That, of course, takes no account of the officer time that was invested in both of the processes. Now, we will undoubtedly be criticised for this outlay, quite possibly by the very people who insisted that we hold the second consultation. The lesson here is, members, that whatever we do, we can't win. Right? That's certainly been my experience through this consultation and all the others that we've undertaken. Paragraphs 6 to 14 on pages 136 to 137 in the main body of the report summarise the overall outcomes from the process. I don't propose to read through them all now, members, because you will have had the opportunity to do so. I will summarise, however, to say that there is significant opposition to the merger proposal from the residents of Sorgo Massey. I gave an undertaking at the public meetings that I would faithfully represent their views, and I believe that the comprehensive report that you have in front of you today does just that. That said, the views of the people of West Kirby, Hoylake and Mells also need to be heard, as it is they who would suffer longer response times if the merger was not to go ahead. The absolute majority of participants in this process consider that the merger proposal is reasonable in the circumstances. If I quote directly from paragraph 22 and 23 of the Opinion Research Services report on page 274. In general, though, there is considerable support for the authority's prepared merger option. In fact, the levels of support manifest in the resident survey and deliberative meetings might fairly be described as emphatic. Bear in mind, members, that the resident survey elicited over 10 times the responses than the questionnaire. So MFRA may proceed on the basis that it has considerable community support for its draft proposal. The next sentence, however, points out, rightly, that this is not simply a numbers game, which is correct. Not least because the primary concern of the Fire and Rescue Authority is with the discharge of functions under the Fire and Rescue Services Act, which, members, I will cover on the next report on the agenda. I'll pause at that point, members, to take any questions that you might have.
Excuse me, sorry, but we've got a leak here.
Yeah, the check in it.
Okay, so colleagues, we're talking about here 7, which is the process of consultation. It's just condensation coming out of the air conditioning box. Are there any, you want to move to the seat behind? Are you okay? Are there any questions regarding the issue of, come on to the decision making in a moment, but any questions regarding the consultation process? Yes.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Now, I clearly will just talk about the consultation because hopefully you'll allow me to come in more on item 8 as we move forward. I mean, I think it's fair to say that the residents in Sorgham Massey and in fairness probably the wider Wirral area, many of those residents have the opinion, whether it's correct or not, that there has been some collusion between the Chief Fire Officer and his officers and senior officers of Wirral Borough Council, particularly in relation to the identification of sites. And I think really we'd just like to bottom that out here today and have a response from the Chief. From my understanding, there were 6 sites primarily detailed, which could be possible venues for a new merged fire station to be built. If the Chief could just, to allay the fears of the public and hopefully to dispel the myth that there, you know, that, as I say, their belief that there has been any collusion, could he please just go through those 6 sites that were given to us in the beginning and just say for whatever reason each one of those was dismissed. There's a particular area which is a wooded area in the Sorgham Massey area, which, although the residents may not have liked it to go there, I think they would have found it a little bit more palatable. But when the decision was taken by Wirral Borough Council to withdraw the site from Greasby, it would appear that this site that we're talking about here today in Sorgham Massey actually popped up. And I'm just wondering what the process was of that, and I think it would be helpful not only to myself and all members here, but particularly to the members of the public, if we could just know why and for what reasons those 6 sites were either dismissed or we are where we are today with the present decision that we're going to make on item 8. It has been useful as well to look at some of the email trails in relation to the freedom of information requests that have been made by a member of the public. And I'm sure that member of the public clearly knows who he or she is, but there was a couple of points which residents and in fairness ward councillors have asked me to raise here today, and I wanted to do that publicly. And if perhaps you will bear with me, and perhaps again if we could just have an answer as to the explanation. There was an email which was sent to a senior officer at Wirral Council. One of the emails which came to light via the Freedom of Information request from the Deputy Chief Executive, in which clearly he thanks an officer of Wirral Borough Council for their efforts and their pragmatic advice. I understand that is probably in relation to identifying the site. And it's expressed that it seems to be a really exciting development and one which the whole management team of Merseyside Fire and Rescue would be really keen on. He therefore looks forward to working with the officer from Wirral Borough Council. And a remark was made about we now look forward to deliver the operation Reading by Firelight begins. What does that term, Operation Reading by Firelight, begin clear, it's confusing to all, but it's something which residents and ward councillors in that area have hitched onto really, and perhaps quite rightly, where they do feel that it is just one, but perhaps many reasons why they believe that there has been some collusion with officers of Wirral Borough Council. I'm not saying that, it's what residents have asked me to raise here today.
Councillor Kearns, you've indicated it's on the same point.
Yes, sir. Very much so. I think it's wrong for the member. The member said I'm a new member. I've been around politics for a lot longer than the member. I've been the member saying it. But I think it's wrong for the member to come here and say there's been collusion and not substantiate in the speech that she's just made, not substantiate one iota of any proof of collusion to choose that site. It could have been asked in the basis, why was that site chosen? But that wasn't the thing. It was an accusation against the chief officer, and that shouldn't be allowed to happen. Thanks, Chairman.
Well, Councillor Gladden, I'll come back. But Councillor Gladden, is this on the same point?
Yes, Chair, it is. And really, just to take it forward, because, you know, it's always somebody said, or this was carried on. The thing, no matter what, following on from the chief's position or our position, is that any decision will be taken by the planning department of the Borough Council. But, you know, there's going to be, on that council, as far as I know, on that committee, will be representatives from every one of the political parties. Collusion, there can be as much collusion as you like between people wanting to talk, but the final decision on whether or not that piece of land, or any piece of land, goes to anywhere, will have to be made by those people there. So, in reality, when you say that collusion, what you're really doing is you're accusing those people as well. They are actually the only part, along them, the licensing and planning are the only councillors, the committees on the council that are sub judice. They are on the law. And so when Councillor Rainey starts talking about collusion, you're starting to pull people in there, and to be blunt about it, we have people sent to jail for less than that. So, you know, it's easy enough to throw these things out, and it may be good for the public. But, you know, I think you're actually attacking some of your own people as well, who actually sit on those committees.
I mean, clearly, it's not my intention. I think I did say I was asking the question because it is perceived by some members of the public. I'm not saying that I perceive it, and I certainly hope, you know, that that isn't the case, and I do believe it's not the case, and that's why I've specifically asked if you could dispel the myths that are going around and ask the Chief Fire Officer just to itemise the reasons why these other sites were dismissed, and I think that would then satisfy members of the public. You know, I'm taking no lectures from members of the Labour Party accusing me of saying that officers have colluded. That was not what I said. I said I was asking the question because it was something which was in the mind of local residents and perhaps some of ward colleagues out there. And all I'm doing for those Labour members who clearly would like to, you know, stop throwing things at me, carry on if you wish to, but I am asking for that myth to be dispelled, so that at least when we come to the next item, I would hope that the members of the public, you know, have in their minds that we have done all we can as a fire and rescue authority to make sure that those other sites were not suitable for this particular merger that is proposed.
Okay, so the political management of the authority, as we know, is in the hands of members. And we delegate these decisions to our officers. And we know that for a prolonged period of time, we had a plan to merge sites in the Wirral and other parts of the borough, of the county. And we delegated to our officers to look at the Wirral as an option for merger. So, Chief?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'll try and give Councillor Rainey some of the reassurances that she seeks. Although I have to say, I think in circumstances like this, my experience has been that when views become very polarised, it matters probably not a great deal what I say. And so people have already made their mind, which is fine. I understand that. The officers, Deputy Chief Executive, Kieran is responsible for corporate assets, and he has led with the engagement with the local authorities in Knowsley, Wirral and indeed St Helens to identify sites for the merger options, of which there have been numerous. The reason that the Griesby Library site was advanced first is because it was the only site that was in the proximity of the midpoint 3 Lanes End that is not in the Greenbelt. Because clearly the operational principle around the merger here is to get as close to the midpoint as you can for reasons which would be self-evident to you all. Challenge that we've had in the Wirral is that there is, unlike St Helens, for example, that you're considering today, you look between Eccleston and St Helens is the St Helens town centre, and then a large portion of residential, retail and industrial areas. So in one sense, a slightly less problematic undertaken from an environmental perspective, but no less problematic from actually trying to find somewhere that you can physically secure. So we pursued numerous sites on the Wirral. The Griesby Library site was the one that officers from Wirral suggested to us to consider, simply because it already housed a library, a health centre and a children's centre. It was viewed in planning terms as a public services hub. Therefore, there was no planning reason, there is no planning reason why a fire station couldn't be built on that particular piece of land. Members should realise, though, we don't own the land, we don't have any compulsory purchase powers. Therefore, we are very much hostages to fortune in these negotiations, given the fact that it's just not within our gift to go out and secure land. We are very much beholden to the landowners. And as you'd expect, in the first instance, we would engage with local authority partners, because, as we've choose my words carefully now, the dealing with the private sector can be more problematic for reasons, again, which might be self-evident to you all. Once the Greenbelt site was, the library site was withdrawn, it was clear at that point then that the only other land that we could pursue that was in Wirral's ownership at that time, again, because we don't have compulsory purchase powers. And whilst we have, or agents on our behalf have approached landowners in the vicinity of 3 Lanes End, we can't force people to sell, nor can we force people to engage with us to consider selling their land. The one piece of land that was suitable from a response perspective was the piece, or is the piece of land that sits adjacent to Woodpecker Close, and is the one which is under consideration now, members. It's that simple. There is no hidden agenda here. It is just as simple as that. You know, we can't compulsory purchase land. I can't magic land up out of nowhere. We've got to deal with what we've got, and I have to say, and for the record, I am very grateful to our colleagues in Wirral, to Knowsley and to St Helens for all of the assistance that they've afforded us in that regard, because it's been very time consuming for them as it has for us, but it is in the pursuit of an outcome that delivers the least impact on community safety. Therefore, their efforts, in my view, are to be commended. In terms of the FOI request, I have no knowledge of that particular request, and certainly reading by firelight is definitely not a comment that I would make. Pause at that point, Chair.
Sorry, I can answer that.
No, there's no opportunity for public. There's no opportunity for public at this stage. Thank you. Are you okay with that? Yes, fine. Thank you. Are there any other questions at that stage before we move on to 8? Thank you. Right. Well, the recommendation here is to note for consideration, note and thoroughly consider the report before us, and I think that's been done and agreed. Thank you. So we go on to item 8, which are pages 371 to 382, and I would particularly draw your attention to the recommendations here, which are printed on page 371. Chief.
Thanks, Chair. The purpose of this report, members, is to advise you of the operational response saving options for West Wirral, taking into account the outcomes of the public consultation process that you've considered in the previous report, and my professional recommendation to you as to which option you should approve in order to achieve the least impactful outcome on operational response. Members are well aware of the background to this particular proposal, not least because you've just considered the consultation outcomes, and as I've said during in speaking to the last report, that we previously undertook the 12-week consultation process last year over the Griesby Library site. Members are also well aware as to the reasons why we're having to make these structural changes, but for completeness and for the record, it's because of the ongoing cuts to our budget. The option to do nothing clearly is not an option. I think also for the record, members, this isn't a report that we as officers would be putting in front of you if we had any other choice. Clearly we would keep all of our fire stations open if we were able to. The operational rationale for the merger proposal is detailed on paragraph 5 of page 372. It's been well rehearsed already in this meeting, so I don't propose to speak in any great detail to that again. But it is, members, a matter of fact that the merger of the two whole-time single pump stations into a one single pump whole-time station as close as possible to the midpoint between the two existing stations does deliver the least impact on operational response. I say again, members, that is a matter of fact. As has been established previously, that fact's been recognised by the absolute majority of participants in the consultation process, who have expressed support for the proposal, and indeed a significant number of other fire and rescue authorities around the country who have pursued the same structural change option. As I made clear in the report of paragraph 7 on page 373, however, there is significant opposition to the proposal from Sorghum Massey residents who have raised a number of observations and concerns throughout the consultation process. The overwhelming majority of observations and concerns relate to planning rather than operational response issues. Within the report, I'm attempting to deal with those issues that do have some bearing on operational response. That's at paragraphs 9 to 15 on pages 373 to 374. The use of rapid response vehicles was advanced on a number of occasions as an alternative to the merger, and indeed Mr Spencer raised that very point in his address to the authority. Members may be aware, possibly the new members won't be, but for their benefit, Merseyside was the first authority to introduce what was known back in the day as a targeted response vehicle. That's about 10 years ago now, members. The purpose of those vehicles, as the name would suggest, is to respond to small, non-life risk incidents, to ensure that rescue pumps remain available to respond to life risk incidents. These vehicles were introduced as an additional resource, or more latterly as an alternative to support pumps, which, for the benefit of everyone, are the second appliance on two appliance stations, as they are smaller, carry less equipment, and typically would be crewed by 2 to 3 firefighters, whereas a rescue pump is crewed by 5 firefighters and a support pump is crewed by 4. Members will recall that as a direct result of cuts to the authority budget during the last spending review, all but 2 of our support pumps were removed when appliance numbers reduced from 42 down to 28, and that took effect on the 9th of September 2013. The budgetary provision for small fires units, which we had at that time, was subsumed into the main element of the budget to maintain as many rescue pumps as we could. All of the stations on the Wirral are now single appliance rescue pump stations. As recent as 2013, Wallasey, Birkenhead and Bromborough all had support pumps. Okay, they were all 2-pump stations. Nowhere in the country has a targeted response vehicle been used or been introduced rather to replace a rescue pump at a single pump station. Targeted response vehicle cannot be deployed to life risk incidents as a first response, as it carries insufficient equipment and crew to achieve a safe system of work required to make an effective intervention. To give you an example, members, the National Operational Guidance, Breeding Apparatus Command and Control Procedures, the minimum level of breeding apparatus entry control is rapid deployment, which requires on Merseyside a minimum of 4 personnel to deliver the safe system of work to initiate breeding apparatus procedures, which is something you would absolutely need to do at any house fire or domestic property fire life risk incident. It's not a credible option, therefore, for the authority to replace a rescue pump at West Kirby with a targeted response vehicle. Notwithstanding the fact, members, that to crew a targeted response vehicle on a 24/7 basis would require at least 12 whole-time equivalent posts, which, to deliver the savings necessary to meet the 2015-16 budget assumptions, would mean you would also have to convert the Birkenhead or Wallasey rescue pump to a TRV. Like, there is no prospect I would recommend that that's what you did, members. Okay? Targeted response vehicles are not an option. They have never been used to replace rescue pumps. Right? We introduced them first here on Merseyside, and we've unfortunately been the first to take them away because we can no longer afford to crew anything other than rescue pumps. It is all about safe systems of work. Second issue raised, members, was traffic conditions in the area. Strictly speaking, that is a planning issue. Just make the following points, though, which are at paragraphs 13 through 15. All of our authority drivers are trained to arrive safely at an incident. Okay? They do not drive at speeds in excess of that which are appropriate for the road conditions. The roads on West Wirral, for the avoidance of any doubt, right, present no greater challenges than the roads anywhere across Merseyside. All our drivers are required to drive safely in the vicinity of schools, of houses and of any other building to reach an emergency incident in the quickest time possible. The other point to note here is, members, that if we proceeded with the outright closure of West Kirby, then the first response to West Kirby station area would come from Upton and therefore would have to use the very roads that is being claimed that it's unsafe to drive on. That is a matter of fact, members. Not as early as last night, Upton responded to an incident on Hoylake station area, a house fire in Hoylake, responding down Sorrel-Massey Road, 2 lanes end roundabout, up Heron Road and onto Birkenhead Road, and didn't encounter any significant issues at all.
Why didn't West Kirby respond?
There's no opportunity.
There is no evidence, members, also from analysis of response times that there is any impact at all at peak times. If anything, we are actually faster responding during the hours of 0700 to 1000 and 1600 through 1900 to incidents on the West Kirby station area from Upton. As with all the merger proposals, officers have engaged with North West Ambulance Service and Merseyside Police over sharing of stations. As yet, neither organisation is committed to having a presence at the proposed site. If the merger proposal is approved, members should note, and as the point that we've made previously, that any new station would not be operational until late 2016 or early 2017 at the earliest. That is, of course, contingent on securing planning permission and the transfer of the land from Wirral. The reasons explained in paragraph 18 to 21 on pages 374 and 375, it is no longer possible to crew appliances at non-key stations on every shift. That rotates around appliances, which is inclusive of Eccleston, which you've considered previously in St Helens. Previously advised members at the budget meeting on the 26th of February, within report CFO 13/2015, of the interim measures that I have now taken to minimise operation availability up to this point. Whatever happens, members, the availability of the West Kirby appliance will be maintained in the future through the utilisation of whole-time retained crewing and whole-time where it can be achieved. To summarise, members, the consultation process considered two options, which are the merger of Upton and West Kirby or the outright closure of West Kirby. All of the other options open to the authority, along with my professional view as to why I would not recommend them at this time, are contained within Appendix 1 of Report CFO 05915, which have considered immediately prior to this report. It remains my view that the merger proposal will result in the least impact on operational response of any of the options open to the authority, accepting that there are no recommendations I can make that will improve performance. That, members, is a matter of fact. It is my strong recommendation, therefore, that members approve the proposal to merge the existing 5 stations at Upton and West Kirby at a new station as close as possible to the midpoint between the 2 stations at Three Lanes End. As it stands, the only land available to the authority is Aaron Wirral's ownership on Sorrel Massey Road. In the event that the recommendation is approved, officers will submit a planning application and request the transfer of ownership from Wirral. The Equalities Impact Assessment for this proposal is appended to the previous report you've considered, and you've considered that EIA clearly prior to this point. The financial implications are detailed in paragraphs 31 to 34, which is on pages 376 to 377. You're all well aware by now, members, of the financial implications appertaining to the proposal and the reasons why we're having to pursue the merger in the first instance. But again, and in the interest of completeness and for the record, it is as a direct consequence of the ongoing cuts to the authority budget. I'm conscious, members, that we have debated or certainly discussed this issue at length, certainly up to this point, so I'll pause at that point to take any questions that you may have.
The authority considered the report in principle, exposed it for comprehensive public consultation. That is now what we've got back before us. Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to ask a question here. On targeted response vehicles, you say that these vehicles are to respond to small, non-life risk incidents. Can you give an example, please, of what a small, non-life risk incident would be?
Yeah, certainly, Chair. It is a what we term a secondary fire, so a antisocial small fire. Examples would be bin bags in rear entries, that type of thing.
Thank you.
Members, opportunity for questions on this report?
Not questions, just some comments. I'll wait to see them.
Oh, yes, Councillor Solomon.
I'd just like to say, as a member of this authority, I'm very proud of what the Chief and the Deputy Chiefs do, and all our staff. But I'm even more proud that we've got whole-time firefighters, and our response rates are the lowest in the country for the fire engine leaving the station and getting to your house. Anywhere else in the country, you're talking 10 minutes. And minutes cost lives.
Very good point. Yes, Councillor Reddy, yeah?
Yeah, well, willing to come in now. I mean, clearly, you know, today we're debating really what is best for the people of West Wirral. And it's a difficult decision, but we're trying to come to some sort of conclusion as to how we can best offer those people the best operational preparedness and, in fact, the best operational response to those people, particularly if their lives are in danger of fire or if there's a serious incident or clearly they're trapped and need the assistance of Merseyside Fire and Rescue to rescue them from a road traffic accident. But we're clearly not here to debate the issue of whether or not it's a good idea to have it on greenbelt land. We're here purely to look at the safety of the majority of the people in West Wirral. And probably, I find myself here today, it's one of probably the most difficult decisions that I've had to make in 24 years of being a councillor. And it's a difficult decision, particularly for all of us, but for myself personally, I probably find myself forming an opinion which is in opposition to some of my colleagues on Wirral. And I'm sorry about that, but I have to take a pragmatic approach on what is the best opportunity of saving lives in that wider West Wirral area. And I just wanted to say thank you really to the work that those local councillors in the area have done in keeping residents up to date, because it has been confusing. I mean, we know the jargon, and clearly the officers who have attended the public meetings have been very careful to try and not use jargon, get it all over to the people, and they've done a good job, in my opinion, on that. But where there has been gaps of misunderstanding, or where residents have wanted further information, then clearly those ward councillors have done a really good job on that. But as I say, it's probably one of the most difficult decisions I've had to make, and it would be quite easy for me politically to say, well, I'm voting against that. But if I did, then my own sort of standards would say, well, it is beholden on me then to identify where that extra funding would come from to fill that gap in our budget. And I have to say, I cannot do that. I cannot find anywhere else where I could take that money from, so that we didn't have to go down the route of closing 2 fire stations in Wirral and having a merged fire station in Sorg or Massey. So the only way that I can sort of square that for myself is to really call on some of the life experiences that everybody has as life goes on. And I have, and I'm very grateful for the fact that I have been a member of another blue light organisation. And I have had to go along to incidents, and I'm not shroud waving here, and I'm not sort of, hand on bleeding heart, but I have been at incidents where you will hold somebody whose life is just dripping away in front of you. And the only way that you could reconcile yourself and your conscience with that is to say to yourself, could I have done anything different to make these circumstances have a different outcome, or could I have got here any quicker? And that is the only way that I've found through my life experiences that I can handle that. And I would imagine that is exactly what firefighters have to do on a day-to-day basis. And for those reasons alone, I have to say that I have to put the safety of the 26,000 people in that West Wirral area at the forefront of my thinking. It's not an easy decision, but I do believe that those 26,000 people deserve to have the opportunity and the benefit of an extra 2 minutes response, so that firefighters can get to them and give them the best chance of carrying on with life, or not obviously,
And that's what I'm not prepared to accept. So I'd like to myself support the recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor.
Chairman, thank you. I agree with what Councillor Renier said, because she has explicitly detailed it. While no loss of life could have been happening, an incident happened in Knowsley a fortnight ago, or within the last 2 weeks, where 7 fire tenders had to be engaged in a fire. Now, while there was no loss of life, there was 400 jobs that could have gone completely had the fire people had not responded very quickly to save that particular factory and some of the equipment within it. It is not just public safety that the fire has to engage in, it's all the periphery things around it. When you're getting 7 tenders having to go to one particular site, you then have to think in terms of all these stations that were closing and coming in. If there was more than 2 incidents across Merseyside, where would you get the fire tenders from? Thanks, Chairman.
Councillor Maloney.
Yes, thank you, Chair. We've all listened, we've all read the reports, and we do understand that people are really, really concerned about this new build. Reading the information and what I've heard today, it's all about planning. We are not a planning committee. councillors and the people will have the opportunity to go back to Wirral Council and sort out their grievances, have an opportunity to put into that. It's not our job here today. It's our job on Merseyside Fire Authority to make sure that everyone in Merseyside gets the best possible fire cover that we at this moment can afford to give them. So on that, I'd like to thank Councillor Rennie for her support and move the recommendation, Chair, that we accept.
Okay, well, I've just got a couple of questions.
Right.
Yeah, Councillor Robbins.
Okay, well, I would like to second Councillor Maloney's proposal that we approve the recommendation. I'd like to thank Councillor Rennie for what he said. I don't often agree with her, but I certainly can go into politics to make cuts. I thought I would do the other way round, and this is one of the most difficult decisions we've had to make. But I think we're doing the right thing for the people in West Wirral.
Oh yes, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. As a new member, I would just like to add some comments. First of all, I would like to thank my colleague here, Councillor Rennie, for what she said. I think that was an absolutely excellent what she said, and it is a very, very difficult decision for everybody. And myself, I have read the reports here like a fine-tooth comb. I've been through everything, and I cannot see any other way forward for us all today here. I think this is the best option, considering what we've got on the table and these government cuts that we've got facing us and more to come. So that's where I am at the moment. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, well, thank you, members. This is the document, one of the largest reports that we've had presented before us, other than the budget, always. And I think there's no question of predetermination. This was a proper process of consultation, set against the background of unavoidable cuts to be made and a limited number of sites. We're not property developers. You know, we are presented with sites, we go through the process. We have to work in partnership, in this case, with Wirral Council. We've not chosen this site to punish the community. Of course not. This is about improving public safety, because as our resources reduce, we have to start thinking more as about a county, a one whole provision of full fire and safety and rescue for the whole county. And where we place our individual provisions, and bear in mind one of the opening comments I made about, you know, substantial cuts still to come, we'll have big decisions in public life. Councillor Rennie, you're absolutely right, and thank you, and Councillor Welsh, for your support on that. When you're in public life, there are big and unpalatable decisions that you have to make sometimes. But here, we have a single focus, and that's public safety. We're not the planning authority, we're not the landlords. Our job is, and the Chief Fire Officer's job, is to put forward what, in the officer's consideration, is the safest option for the whole of that community and the whole of Merseyside. We've gone through a deliberative process, we've come here today, we've given it a really good opportunity. Now, the recommendations are there on page 371 in A, B, C and D. They've been moved, they've been seconded. Would you indicate those in favour, please? That's unanimous. There's no point saying any against, because that's unanimous. So thank you, members. If the public would like to stay, you'd be very welcome to stay. If you'd like to leave, we could pause for a moment if you'd like to.
It's nearly half past.
Got puzzled because you said it.
You know,
Breaking up people's lives, breaking up
no,
people's
please, it's a public body, it's a public authority, with
undermining
more
people's
business,
quality of life.
with more business
It's
to
a
deal with.
few couples that have bought houses with babies on the front
No,
row.
excuse me, madam, please,
Wait,
out of the door.
losing
Out of the door.
losing £13,000 worth of value on
Thank
their
you,
homes.
thank you. Right, we'll move on to the next item now.
Do you want to be paying to take or have a house with
I'd rather look at the
No,
dates. I'd
please.
rather I would
Okay.
rather have my health,
Madam,
my physical
Madam.
health, the birds singing,
Thank
and
you.
walking along.
Thank you. Would you please
I would
leave
rather
that?
have my
I'm
spiritual
going
health
to move on
doing the
to
same.
item 9, freedom of information requests, 1450.
Breaking up people's lives.
Pages,
and
madam,
if Dan's
pages
found 3 different
383
sites
to
over 6
388.
months, surely given
Send the
another 3
report to the
months
Chief
to find
Fire
another
Officer.
site that would be suitable and that
Everyone,
wouldn't
that's
involve
very
residents.
That's rude.
We're not
Very,
against
very
what you
ignorant.
do.
If you
We
would
value
leave-
what you
If
do.
you would leave now,
But
we've
it's
business
because
to-
you're affecting residents.
No,
Surely there must be
let's-
somewhere where residents
just carry on,
wouldn't
Jim.
be compromised and
Item
have their
9,
quality
which
of
is on
life
page 383.
ruined.
The purchase report
And as for
to
response
members
times,
of the
Dan,
Untitled Freedom of
Dan,
Information request.
as for response times, can I ask you a question?
Would you like me to
This was posted on the street scene website by someone called
Item 9, is that agreed?
Agreed.
Item 10,
You
is that
are alleged to
agreed?
have said
Meeting's
when
finished.
someone